Daniel and Sophia arrived in Bali as newlyweds chasing paradise, but within days, only one of them would leave alive. What unfolded in their honeymoon suite shocked the world and was caught on CCTV for everyone to see. Daniel and Sophia's wedding had been the kind of celebration people dream about, a seaside ceremony filled with laughter, champagne toasts, and the golden glow of sunset. Guests remembered how radiant Sophia looked, her smile wide, her eyes filled with what seemed like endless joy. Daniel stood tall and proud, his hand never leaving hers, his voice steady when he spoke about their future together. To everyone watching, they seemed destined for a life of love, adventure, and shared success. The photographs from that day looked like they belonged in a magazine, the kind of images that people keep on mantles and in family albums for generations. When they boarded the plane to Bali, it felt like the next chapter of their perfect story. They posted photos on social media of their seats, the champagne glasses clinking midair, and the hashtags that spoke of love and forever. Friends and family commented with hearts and congratulations, already eager to see the honeymoon snapshots. In every picture, they appeared inseparable, leaning into one another, framed by clouds and smiles. But pictures have a way of hiding the truths no one wants to admit. The island greeted them with warm breezes and the scent of salt carried by the sea. At the luxury resort, staff welcomed them with garlands of fresh flowers, cold drinks, and practiced hospitality that made them feel like royalty. They walked through the open-air lobby, the ocean glistening just beyond, and were led to their suite overlooking the waves. The room was vast, with polished wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a balcony that seemed to hang over the endless horizon. Sophia twirled in the middle of the room, laughing like a child, while Daniel unpacked their bags with quiet efficiency. He liked order, she thrived in spontaneity. That first night, they dined under the stars, the sound of waves breaking against the shore as waiters brought dish after dish. Candles flickered between them, and for a while, it seemed like the magic of their wedding day had followed them here. Sophia took photos of everything: the food, the pool, the lanterns swaying in the night breeze, while Daniel watched her through narrowed eyes. He laughed when she insisted on one more picture, but behind his smile, his thoughts were elsewhere. He had noticed her phone buzzing more often than usual, and the way she quickly tilted it away from his view. As the night wore on, their intimacy carried them back to the suite, but Daniel's mind was not at ease. He lay awake long after Sophia had drifted off, staring at the shadows moving across the ceiling. Questions gnawed at him. Why did she keep her phone so close? Why did she step outside earlier to take a call she claimed was from her mother, though her tone sounded nothing like casual family talk? He wanted to dismiss the thoughts as paranoia, the jitters of a new husband adjusting to marriage, but the unease stayed. On the surface, they were the couple everyone envied, newlyweds in paradise, holding hands along sandy paths and smiling for every photograph. Yet the paradise surrounding them could not silence the quiet storm building between them. Their honeymoon had begun in perfection, but Daniel's suspicions and Sophia's secrets were already casting shadows across the bright Bali sun. Behind the locked doors of their suite, the seeds of tragedy had already been planted, waiting for their moment to grow. The second night in Bali began with the promise of another perfect day. The sun had painted the sky in shades of orange and crimson, and the air was heavy with the perfume of tropical flowers. Tourists strolled along the beach, children laughed in the pool, and music drifted from the bar. For most, it was a postcard evening. For Daniel and Sophia, however, the cracks that had first appeared in their relationship were beginning to widen in ways that could no longer be hidden behind staged smiles and filtered photographs. Sophia wandered the shoreline alone, her bare feet sinking into the wet sand as the tide rolled back and forth. To the passing eye, she was just another honeymooner enjoying a solitary walk, but those who observed her more closely noticed her distracted movements. She glanced at her phone repeatedly, scrolling quickly, pausing, and then typing before erasing what she had written. More than once she lowered the screen, bit her lip, and shook her head, as though she were fighting with herself over a decision. When the phone buzzed again, she turned her back to the sea and pressed it tightly against her ear, her voice low, her expression strained. She looked less like a woman basking in love and more like someone carrying the weight of an untold story. Back in the hotel, Daniel was not enjoying the night air or the view. He remained inside the suite, restless and agitated. He opened and closed the minibar, then picked up the phone to call the front desk. His request was unusual. He asked that all charges from the room be billed directly under his name and insisted that Sophia's keycard access to certain amenities be restricted. He claimed it was to keep things organized. But the tone of his voice carried a controlling edge that unsettled the staff. They complied, as hospitality demanded, but behind polite smiles, they whispered their concerns to one another. Later, when Sophia returned, she found Daniel waiting. No words were exchanged where others could hear, but the silence between them was heavy. In the hours that followed, muffled voices seeped through the walls of their suite. Guests staying near by heard raised tones, sharp enough to carry through the hall, though nothing was distinct enough to be repeated. Some assumed it was the kind of disagreement couples sometimes have when traveling, and they turned up their televisions or rolled over in bed, dismissing it as unimportant. The truth was far from ordinary. Inside that room, the atmosphere was suffocating. Daniel's suspicion was growing sharper with every unexplained phone call, and every glance he thought lingered too long. Sophia, meanwhile, seemed cornered, trying to balance her desire to keep her secrets hidden with the need to avoid provoking the man she had just vowed to spend her life with. As night stretched deeper, the once joyous suite felt less like a honeymoon retreat and more like a cage. The walls that had echoed with laughter just hours earlier now absorbed whispers of mistrust, footsteps pacing, and the quiet slamming of drawers. Out in the tropical night, the waves still broke gently on the sand, oblivious to the storm gathering behind closed doors. What began as small cracks were quickly becoming fractures, and with each passing hour, the danger of what was building between Daniel and Sophia became harder to ignore. The morning of the fourth day began quietly, the sun rising over the Indian Ocean and casting its light across the hotel grounds. Staff bustled about preparing breakfast for the guests, arranging fruits and pastries, while couples strolled down to the pool in swimwear and wide-brimmed hats. Among them was Daniel, calm and composed, carrying himself with the air of someone enjoying a carefree holiday. He greeted the waiters politely, filled his plate at the buffet, and sat by the poolside with a newspaper. To anyone watching, he was a man beginning another relaxing day in paradise. But one detail soon became impossible to ignore. He was alone. When asked about Sophia, Daniel answered easily. He explained that his wife was sleeping late, tired from the previous evening. His words were casual, his tone convincing, but the hours began to pass and Sophia never appeared. At first, no one thought much of it. Many guests preferred to rest or take spa appointments instead of joining the morning bustle. Yet by midday, a quiet unease began to grow among the staff. The bride, who had been so lively and full of energy during check-in, had not been seen at all that day. By the late afternoon, Daniel's calm exterior began to crack. He paced through the lobby, checking his watch frequently, speaking with the reception desk more than once. He left the hotel and returned carrying shopping bags filled with items no one had seen him use. Some of the staff began to exchange glances, their instincts telling them something was amiss. When pressed again, Daniel repeated that his wife had gone sightseeing alone and would return soon, but the story didn't align with what they knew. Sophia's passport was still locked in the safe, her credit cards untouched, and her phone plugged in by the bedside. No guest leaves for sightseeing without their essentials, especially in a foreign country. Her sandals were still by the balcony door, and the new dress she had laid out for dinner remained untouched on the hanger. Everything suggested she had never left the suite at all. The unease turned into quiet alarm. Security staff began monitoring the couple's floor, discreetly checking if Sophia had been seen by anyone else. Other guests reported nothing unusual, except the faint memory of hearing a commotion 2 nights earlier. The puzzle was slowly coming together, though no one yet dared to say what they were beginning to suspect. By evening, the situation could no longer be brushed aside. Daniel's explanations grew shorter, less convincing, and more impatient. His insistence that everything was fine only deepened suspicions. Hotel management contacted local authorities, explaining that a guest had seemingly vanished under strange circumstances. The police arrived before sunset, blending with the steady stream of tourists in the lobby. They began their work quietly, speaking with staff and requesting access to the couple's suite. Within moments of entering, it was clear something was wrong. The room appeared undisturbed at first glance, but the details painted another story. The balcony door left open, the bathroom floor damp, personal belongings scattered yet untouched. A missing person investigation had now become official. What started as a honeymoon was rapidly spiraling into a mystery that left everyone inside the resort on edge. Investigators combed through the suite carefully, noting every detail. The untouched belongings suggested that Sophia had not planned to leave for any length of time. Her handbag sat neatly on the desk, her phone lay charging beside the bed, and her makeup was arranged as if she had been preparing for another evening out. The wet bathroom floor drew attention immediately, with puddles too large to be explained by a simple shower. The balcony door left open toward the roaring ocean below raised grim possibilities. Some speculated that she might have slipped and fallen, her body carried away by the waves, yet something about the scene felt staged. Nothing was overturned, and there were no signs of a frantic accident. Everything appeared too deliberate, as though someone had tried to tidy up after chaos. The next step was to review the hotel's security cameras. Investigators and security staff gathered in a dim control room filled with monitors, rewinding through the hours of footage from the couple's floor. The first hours showed nothing unusual. Guests moving back and forth, housekeeping carts rattling down the hall, and Sophia herself returning to the room on the second evening. After that, her image disappeared entirely. Then, in the early hours of the night before Daniel's solo breakfast, the atmosphere in the control room shifted. A figure appeared on the screen. Daniel was captured leaving the suite, dressed in dark clothes, a cap pulled low over his face. He was not empty-handed. In his grip was a large suitcase, heavy enough that he struggled to wheel it down the corridor. His movements were deliberate yet strained, as if he was both concealing something and battling the weight of what he carried. The staff who had seen him earlier remembered nothing unusual, but the camera told a different story. The footage showed him avoiding the main elevator, instead pushing the suitcase toward the service lift at the far end of the hall. The camera caught him glancing over his shoulder multiple times, pausing whenever another guest's footsteps echoed nearby. The tension in his movements betrayed a man trying to avoid being seen. Hours later, another camera recorded him dragging the same suitcase through the service exit that led away from the manicured resort grounds and toward the rugged cliffs at the property's edge. When he returned later that night, the suitcase was gone. Investigators followed the trail toward the cliffs. With flashlights piercing the darkness, they searched the jagged terrain below. It did not take long before they discovered the discarded suitcase lodged against rocks in a ravine. Inside lay Sophia's lifeless body, confirming the worst suspicions. The bride who had checked into the hotel full of life and laughter was now reduced to a silent victim of violence and betrayal. The discovery sent shockwaves through the resort. Tourists whispered among themselves, horrified that a paradise escape had turned into a crime scene. The hotel, once filled with music and joy, now hummed with fear and disbelief. Every staff member replayed their memories of the couple, trying to piece together signs they might have missed. Daniel, who had once presented himself as a calm and loving husband, was now the focus of an investigation that revealed his calculated actions frame by frame. The cameras had captured everything, unraveling the illusion he had so carefully tried to maintain. Daniel was taken into custody before he could make his way to the airport. He had already checked out of the hotel, dressed neatly, carrying only a small bag, and acting as though nothing was wrong. Authorities intercepted him at the departure gate, where tourists waiting for their flights watched in confusion as officers surrounded the seemingly composed man. What began as whispers in the terminal quickly became breaking news across local media. The story of the missing bride was no longer a mystery. It had become a confirmed tragedy. At the police station, the interrogation revealed details that cast the honeymoon in a far darker light. Initial assumptions painted the crime as an impulsive act of jealousy, born out of a heated confrontation after Daniel discovered messages between Sophia and an old lover. But as detectives dug deeper, the narrative shifted. They uncovered financial records showing that Daniel had taken out a significant life insurance policy in Sophia's name just weeks before the wedding. The policy promised him a large payout in the event of her sudden death. What had first appeared to be a spontaneous act of rage was now looking like a carefully orchestrated plan. The texts on Sophia's phone told their own story. She had been hesitant about the marriage, confiding to her old lover that she felt trapped but unwilling to call off the wedding at the last moment. She had admitted to doubts about Daniel's controlling nature, but no one expected the doubts to turn deadly. Those messages painted her as a woman conflicted, caught between loyalty to the man she had married and a lingering attachment to her past. For investigators, the emotional turmoil explained the arguments overheard in the hotel suite and the late-night phone calls by the beach. For the world watching, it was evidence of a young bride whose final days were clouded with unease. Daniel, meanwhile, tried to present himself as a victim of circumstance. He claimed the death had been accidental, that a confrontation had gone too far. But the evidence contradicted his words. The suitcase, the attempt to dispose of the body, the calm breakfast the next morning, none of it aligned with the image of a grieving husband. His actions pointed not to shock or remorse, but to cold calculation. News outlets from Bali to his home country seized on the story, splashing photographs of the smiling couple from their wedding day beside grim headlines about betrayal and murder. The image of their perfect love story became the cruelest irony. Viewers around the world were left to wonder how two people who appeared so deeply in love could harbor such darkness between them. The trial that followed drew intense attention. Prosecutors laid out the evidence piece by piece, from the insurance policy to the CCTV footage, leaving little doubt of Daniel's guilt. The courtroom heard every sordid detail, the illusion of romance dismantled until only greed and violence remained. For Sophia's family, grief was sharpened by betrayal. They had celebrated her wedding with hope for her future, never imagining her life would be cut short before it had even begun. The verdict, when it came, provided justice but not healing. The story ended where it began, in Bali, a place known for its beauty and escape. But instead of memories of paradise, it became the backdrop of a nightmare. A honeymoon meant to celebrate love had revealed the depths of deception, leaving behind a chilling reminder that not every perfect photograph tells the truth.